Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. This is Mr. Shakespeare here again with you on the 13th of September 2023. And I'm joined again with psychic medium and remote viewer Liz Cross. How are we doing today, Liz?
Good, thank you. Who joined you on all the other days?
The other Liz Cross. Your doppelganger.
Oh, I was just wondering who joins you on the other
I'm just
days?
trying to vary. I mean, I know most of your interviews don't even do any kind of intro, and I just keep doing the same one over and over again. So I thought I'd change it slightly.
Oh,
You know?
very good.
I might change it again tomorrow. You just don't know. Right. We talked about doing this a while back, and it was on our list, and then for some reason it got slipped away for some reason. I have no idea why, but anyway, we thought we'd probe the founding fathers, or at least two or three of them, on where America is now, I suppose, and where is it going compared to their original ideas, because originally, you know, they came out of what was Great Britain at the time because they didn't agree with the crown, which was the king at the time. So let's start with Benjamin Franklin, please, Liz.
All righty. Yes, I have him here. How exciting.
Is he excited to be here?
Very.
Oh, good. So how has he, in the lens of today, how does he think America has done compared to his original vision? Or is doing compared to his original vision?
It's nothing like what he envisioned at all.
Okay. Can he give us some examples of what he envisaged, what it's like?
This is not power to the people. This is power at the hands of government. That is not what they wanted.
Right. That was the reason they left Great Britain. Or one of them.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And you know, we have, it's taken them a long time, but we've actually managed to be in the position, or just about in the position, that we ran away from.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I would agree.
That leads me to another question. Is it just that naturally
Hello?
that is the only way to maintain control over the country? He says, no, it doesn't have to be this way.
Okay, you actually broke up there while you were asking that question, so I didn't hear the question, so therefore the audience probably didn't either.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So my question to Benjamin Franklin was, is this just a natural occurrence of a governing body in charge of a country? Do we just naturally evolve over time to this way of living, to this state of being, because that's the only way to have a functioning country? And he's saying no. He says no.
What period in time does he believe that it start going wrong?
The 70s, 1970s.
Okay, that's interesting. So up until then, America was doing okay as far as he was concerned. It was sort of pretty much keeping to their founding fathers' principles.
The balance of principles was still heavily weighted on the side of the founding fathers, then come the 70s and 80s, or especially he says the 70s, there was a switch over and it became a power grab.
Would this have anything to do with when the then President Nixon took the US currency, the dollar, off the gold standard, first in 71 temporarily, and then in 73 permanently? Would that, because that's when inflation started for real in America?
Exactly. He is agreeing with you 100%. Explain that to people, please.
So, okay, up until 1971, and from the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1948, basically the dollar, there had to be as much currency was issued had to be backed by gold. So they couldn't just create money out of thin air because they had to have the gold that backed it. And as we know, gold comes out of the ground and it's quite an expensive operation and time consuming to get it out of the ground. So if you look at inflation figures, and you can get these figures, by the way, from the St. Louis branch of the Federal Reserve System. For those who don't know, the St. Louis branch of the Fed does all the statistical research and everything. So they're your friend here. They can go and help you with all sorts of interesting bits of information. And one of the bits you'll find is that inflation figures all the way through from 48 to 1970 was pretty much flat. America didn't really have any real inflation. I mean, the line was pretty much flat all the way. It had very, very low inflation, which meant that, your working dollar, the man was working, the woman didn't have to work. She could bring up children. I mean, you could afford a mortgage, you could afford a car, you could afford everything on one wage because there was really no inflation.
Mm.
That all changed in 1971 when Richard Nixon, because of outflows of gold from America, which was started actually by France, I believe. People wanted their gold back because a lot of gold was deposited in America at the outset of the Second World War. The thought behind it was that, it's a very safe place and nowhere near where the Nazi Germany could get to it. It would be a lot more difficult for them to get to American gold stored in America than it would be, say, stored in France or in Poland or somewhere like that. So a lot of gold was in America. Now, some people then wanted that gold back. A lot of that gold was being used to back in currency. This is a very simplified version of what actually went on. But the point is, gold started disappearing from America, and it got to the point where, they had to do something about it. Well, they couldn't get any more gold. They could try and stop people from getting their gold, which they've always done. But the easiest thing from politicians' point of view was just to untether gold from the dollar. So in other words, instead of, if we want to issue more currency, we don't need the gold backing of that anymore. And so it was done as a temporary measure in 1971. That temporary measure lasted until 1973, where these guys, crazy upon power and everything else they realized they could do, just made it permanent. So Nixon signed the order in 73. Which then took the convertibility away, and then that's the money, that's what we've had ever since. So again, if you go back and look at the inflation charts from the St. Louis Fed and look at 1948 to now, you will see flatlining pretty much all the way to 71, and then bang, and then 73 just goes off to the moon.
Yeah, so it's a license to print money.
Yes, yes, it is. The problem is that it's massively inflationary, which then reduces the buying power of everybody's dollar. If the whole of America ran on $1 million, say, I'm just using this as an example. If the whole of America ran on $1 million, then those dollars would have a good value of what they would buy. maybe $100 would buy a car or something like that. Yeah, I'm being, just using this for demonstration purposes. But if suddenly, they created another $9 million, well, then your buying power has just been reduced from 1 to 1 to 10 to 1. You've just suffered a massive reduction. Now it takes, not $100 to buy a car, but $1,000 to buy that car, and it reduces the value of it. The car is still the same, so it reduces the value of every dollar. And that's what they've been doing ever since. Yeah. We have endless amounts of dollars, circulating around the world, either physically or on balance sheets or on computers, all of which have the buying power of virtually nothing as an individual dollar. I mean, that's what started the inflation race in America. Yeah.
Yeah. So your question off camera was, are we going to head into a world war situation in order to delay the election, or the election
No,
being
not to delay. Well, either postpone or cancel the election, because that then would make the incumbent president Biden a wartime president, which there are certain wartime powers that he would, I believe, have. One of which may be that he doesn't have to call an election. I don't know. I'd have to do. I'm a little bit on shaky ground there. I used to know all this stuff, but I don't anymore. So I just, because I don't really get to talk about it that much. So yes, my question to Benjamin Franklin is that the plan, or well, I think it is a plan. Let's put it this way: does it become executed any time in 2024?
Does are we going to end up in a war situation? We're going to get pretty close to it. Okay, we are. We're going to get.
When will the closest point be? What month in 2024 will, or the end of 23 into 24? What month will be the closest?
It's going to be the start of next year.
Okay.
Don't forget, in another probe that we did, we got all this stuff is going to be exposed around January, February time. So that would fall in line with this possible exposure.
Yeah, but the exposure things are more, they're sort of more on the embarrassment. They're not, has any of, I don't know. How do we ask this?
A lot of people will wonder what we're talking about. If you're not a subscriber to the Patreon already this month, there's 25 videos, or sorry, in the past 3 to 4 weeks, there's 25 videos that are released on the Patreon that you do not have access to. Patreon.com/remote viewing and beyond. Because they're going to wonder what we're talking about. I'm planning to put this video public.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you need to join the Patreon, guys.
You're seriously unenlightened if you are not on the Patreon. I mean, 25 videos of information, financial, political, historical, possible new financial opportunities. It's all there, but they won't have access to that. That's for subscribers only.
Right. Okay. What and how does America get pulled back from the brink of war? Is it something Americans have done, something Europeans have done, something the Chinese have done, or is it the Russians? I mean, what happens?
There's some sort of agreement that happens. Okay, we've got to stop this. America as a whole entity, what I'm being told by Franklin is it really doesn't want to go to war. That's not what the general consensus is about. If this would have been pre, 1970s, in the 60s or 50s, we would have gone in there blazing in, no questions asked. We would have taken it in our stride to go to war and to stop all this. We're a lot more cautious now, obviously, from previous experience, Afghanistan, things like that. So the overall consensus is from the people that war is not necessary.
Right, but there is a faction, obviously, in the US administration currently, the so-called neocons, who that's exactly what they do want. Let's ask Franklin whether the neocons get their wish at any time in the next year or two.
No, they will be stopped.
Good.
They're losing power. I just feel that what he's telling me is the pendulum starting to swing the other way as far as like power to the people. He says yes, but that will only be temporary. As we start looking out into the future, 2040s, 2050s, it'll be right back where it is. So people are trying to take back power and control, but this is not the country that they envisioned.
No, well, yeah, that does not surprise me. I mean, it's the reason why. It's why they left Great Britain when they did.
They wanted to be free from taxes. They wanted to be free thinking. They wanted to have their own belief systems. They wanted to be able to do free enterprise, trade, be in business without being taxed to death, being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And I'm a realist. I realize a lot of these things are necessary, especially when you have, industry that can pollute the waterways. I get that. But obviously they didn't have that sort of knowledge then that this is where society would be headed. And he agrees that those things are necessary. The environmental protection, you know, the government involvement in business in that way, and human rights and labor laws and things like that. Those things are important, but he says they've got us all in a chokehold, and that the way that we're headed, we're not going to be able to do any business without approval from the government. Now, he's talking several years out, but they will be able to monitor everything through tech.
Right.
So they'll be able to see all the transactions. They'll be able to see what people are buying. They're going to be able to see, and they're going to have control. And we've got this so many times.
Yeah, we have.
For those of you out there in the public sphere, not on the Patreon, the Cashless Society video was one of the most important videos I think we've ever done. What else would you like to ask Franklin?
Does he see an end to what can only be described as America's military adventures? It has about 800 bases all over the world. Why? Well, okay, but all of that costs a huge amount of money, but America doesn't need 800 bases all over the world. I mean, does he see a time where, will there be a time in the future where America withdraws back into itself? I mean, it's a huge country. It's got massive resources. It doesn't need to be doing all of this stuff. And it certainly didn't do for the first, 100 or 200 years of its existence. So does he see a time when America will go back to that?
Yes, but it's going to take a very long time. And it will actually only be replaced with digital monitoring. They
Right.
won't ever stop monitoring those areas. It will just be that it's replaced with technology to collect information. I feel
Right.
like the manpower will be scaled back, but I don't feel like the bases will close. They can be mothballed, but I don't think they're just going to leave. No.
Right. But what is the purpose of keeping them?
What is the purpose of keeping them? Uh, Basically, if they need to strong arm anyone, if they need to go in and use a force of power, they can, react quickly if necessary. They're
Right.
not going to be caught off guard like they have in the past. So they're not willing to do that.
In the next 5 years, will there be war between America and China?
They'll have to come to some sort of agreement. What do you mean by that agreement? I think that we're going to be, handbags at dawn with China. I really do. Um, we're starting to see China, although internally people are like, oh no, internally it's not doing so well. But, when there's an agenda there, internally they're not so much worried about that. They're worried about fulfilling the agenda. And they're becoming extremely powerful. They want the world to be dependent upon them for everything. And we're letting them. That's what gets me. And all the other probes that we've done, we're letting them.
Right. Well, yes. A lot of the manufacturing obviously has gone over to China. China probably surpasses everybody now in manufacturing capability. Um, so this is something that has been allowed, foisted even, uh, and certainly with consent of America, or sorry, consent of some people in America. Um, does Franklin think that will manufacturing ever properly come back to the US?
No,
Right.
no, that's gone.
So, how does America in the future, in the next, say, 5 years, 10 years, how does it? What is its growth in service industries? Or if it's not manufacturing, what else? I mean, is it just service, or what is it?
It's the tech industry.
Right. So
Now,
America will lead the world in tech?
yes,
Ooh.
yes, because we have the money to put into it and to invest into it, into new startups, AI, more technological advances. The world is going to try to keep up. They'll copycat a lot of it. They always do. And we copycat them. Everybody copies one another. But I feel like we're going to make some real headway in sustainable energy and technology. And it has to be a combined effort, meaning tech goes in line with sustainable energy.
Right. Okay. Would would Benjamin Franklin agree that without tech, without that kind of future, then America will spiral downwards faster than most other countries. I say this because, America at the moment used to be the screw, used to make everything, and they don't so much nowadays. It's so they've got to do something, haven't they? They have got a lot of money, but don't forget they've also got the world's reserve currency. So, at the moment, so is okay, let me ask this, stated a different way. Are there people in the American administration, either now or in the future, that understand that that's their way forward?
No, it's the business.
Right.
It's the businesses that understand.
So the politicians don't understand.
No, no.
Tell me again why people listen to politicians.
I don't know. Don't forget, whenever we've probed these politicians, we've probed even hedge fund managers, they're very dinosaur, they go with what works, they go with the flow. They tend to give like sort of old school answers. It's the tech industry that are going to take off, and the government will then swing on their coattails in order to stay relevant.
Right.
That's what I'm getting.
Okay. Will there be any curtailing of America's spending? Because obviously the national debt is, in the trillions at the moment. I mean, are they going to just keep on spending in the short term? The short term, I mean, the next 5 years.
They're going to try to cut costs. They are. What about the future of the debt? It will never be resolved. We will forever be in debt.
Right.
That wasn't what he envisioned for the country either.
No. What does he think of the Federal Reserve System that came in 1913?
It was a way to control people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he says a country in debt will never own itself. Someone will always own them. Is the debt just going to keep increasing? Yeah, he doesn't see any end to this debt. Nobody wants to deal with it. They say they do, but then you're having to push, the bills through Congress in order to get, to curtail the spending to fix the debt problem. And then you're met with a lot of resistance.
Right.
It will never be solved. Now, that's very alarming to me.
Well, the problem that means then that the kick it down the road, mentality will just carry on. So, in other words, we will roll over the debt. Yes, it's due this week, this month, this year, but when it is due, we'll just take out more loan to pay this one, and then we'll roll it out a bit further on. At the end of the day, what they're doing is paying the interest on the debt. The debt almost doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, but the interest keeps increasing the more you borrow.
Well, of course.
And you know who's waiting in the wings to buy most of the debt? China.
Really? I did not know that. I thought China was dishoarding American treasuries. I thought they were trying to dive, divest themselves of American holdings.
Are you trying to divest yourself? Yeah, that's only a temporary measure.
Oh, okay.
That will switch back.
Why would China want to buy American debt?
Power.
Well,
Influence.
it's not like you can go and foreclose on America, can you?
No, but you can try to call in the debt and you can make things very difficult unless you're pushing policies through that benefit China in some way. Very
The
complicated.
way I've always understood it is that, you know, if you wanted to cause a problem that way, you would sell all of America's debt. You know, China would dump all of their treasury holdings and everything, which would then cause massive problems in America, but it would also cause massive problems in China because, you know, that that debt that's owed is an asset on China's books, if you like. You know, what do you have? Well, we have 3 trillion of which is owed of American debt, you know. So if they were to dump that, it would work against them just as much as it would work against America. I mean, these are sort of Armageddon tools of finance that, you know, nobody ever really speaks about, you know. For
Mm.
example, I mean, recently America, Biden and that have been bad mouthing China. So China responds by dumping American debt, just selling it off. But they only do it, you know, in small tranches. They don't sell the lot, you know. I mean, if your next door neighbor, you held the note for your next door neighbor, and all the next door neighbor ever did to you, Liz, was badmouth you every minute of every day, you know, you might want to just get rid of that note so that you don't have to deal with it anymore. And you might sell it to a loan shark who, you know, hasn't quite got your level of patience. But you'd be divested of it. It'd be gone. It wouldn't be a problem, you know. But they can only do that in small bits. I mean, they do it to make political gestures, but I don't think. I mean, China really should dump all of America's debt, but it would cause massive problems in China as well. Because what's that debt on the asset side of China's bank balances backing? We don't know because their system isn't open. So, you know, but I'm absolutely
That
convinced cause of
would be a
trouble.
good probe.
Yeah, but then we're into speculation and hypothetical of what could happen if, you know, if we did this and that happens, then what would happen? You know, China are not going to, at the moment, short of actually going to war with America, not going to drop America's debt. They're not going to dump it. They might sell some off, yes. They have been reducing it over time. Um, you know, I think they're down about a third from their peak, something like that, but they're still holding.
Hmm. I
I mean,
think it's worth the
Russia
probe.
has a lot of American debt, but they never had that much to begin with, you know, not compared to China. So Russia is a small player compared to China in the debt market.
Hmm. And who holds the rest?
Well, if you hold treasuries, you do.
Hmm.
ABA holds treasuries in their 401k, they do. You know, America's debt is spread out, you know, amongst its population and amongst foreign debt, you know, holders. I think China is probably the largest because they can measure it in the trillions. Whereas if you've got, you know, $100 of treasury bonds in your 401k, well, you know, they owe you 400, you know, a couple of $100 or whatever it is, $400.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean,
It would be interesting to see where the
problem is
debt
this
is
started with
going.
Nixon. This started with Nixon. And of course, the bankers were loving this, weren't they? You know, because they get to charge interest on the money they create. Essentially out of thin air, although it's not quite like that because there has to be a borrower on the other side for them to be allowed to do it. You know, that's what you get a license from a banking license for. Yeah. So as long as you've got somebody on the other side willing to say, yes, I promise to pay you back the sum of, whether it's a mortgage, an auto loan, or whatever, you can create it if you have that ability. You know,
Mm.
American,
Interesting.
American treasuries are the same thing. American government creates them. They say, I promise to pay. So the Federal Reserve, basically creates for them.
All very interesting. Um, so any last questions for?
Got the general. I think this was more of a. Are they actually? No. Let's ask a couple more questions before we go. Right. The 2024 U.S. elections that are due to happen in November 2024. Did they happen?
Yes, they will go ahead.
Okay. Will it be a predominantly or only postal ballot? In other words, you can't attend in person. You have to either have a mail-in ballot or a postal ballot or something like that. Or were most of the votes, you had to attend in person?
In person.
What does that mean? There were no postal ballots, or there were just, not that many?
There were
Insignificant.
several postal ballots. Yes, there's several, but the majority in person. The majority are in person. It's, that depends upon which state you're in as
I know,
well.
I know, but I'm looking at America as a whole. So, I mean, I'm asking you, therefore, Benjamin Franklin, to look at it as a whole. You know,
Yeah. Do you like the idea of postal voting? He hates it. Too much
Uh,
room for error and fraud.
there you go. Funny that, isn't it?
Everybody should report in person.
I agree. And in fact, it would be better if, yeah, I mean, everybody should have picture ID, and be able to do that, so there's less chance of fraud and
I
shenanigans.
I I don't know which states they're allowed to not show a picture ID because where I am, I have to show my ID. I
Uh,
don't
there
understand
are,
that.
are quite a few states that they allowed that to happen, um, mainly due to some lockdown measures that they previously implemented.
Well, hmm, I can't ask that question. You're not allowed to talk about the last election.
Oh,
So,
well, no, but you can. Well, okay. Well, why don't we ask this question? Will there be any form of lockdown measures enacted in 2024?
no, it'll be self lockdown, not implemented lockdown.
So you can decide to lock yourself down?
Yes, if you is the COVID virus going to be rampant again? Not like it was before. Most people have had it now.
Right. So there are no. Well, they're funny enough. They use a lot of words like mandates and all that lot, but mandates are not law. So, I mean, recommendations are not law. You can mandate anything, you can recommend anything, but it doesn't make it a law. You
Right.
know. So let's ask this: did Congress on a federal level pass any laws where people had to be locked down for any reason or any length of time in
No,
2024? No.
in 2024. No, no.
Okay. Good.
So that's really interesting. I thought this was very good, actually. I know you gave a lot of background information there, so thank you. But a lot of people have been asking us to, are we going to go back into lockdowns? What's going to happen? Are we going to war? Are we this? Are we that? And
Well,
I
there's
think,
certainly a lot of fear mongering around, and that may be part of the program, part of the narrative, because they do like people kept in fear. So, you know, mm,
mm, and we also found out where we're headed in the future with innovation.
mhm.
Um, yeah, it was a really interesting probe. So thank you for this. I'm appreciative. So thank you.